Hello friends, I am Dr. Kuldeep Mohadikar. In this video, I will be presenting my 15th chapter from the series Chapters from the History of English Literature, entitled as Metaphysical School of Poets. A metaphysical poets is a term invented by Dryden and adopted by Dr. Johnson as the designation of a group of poets of the first half of 17th century. Those who belong to this school are John Donne, George Herbert, Henry Vaughan, Abraham Cowley, and Andrew Marvell. The metaphysical poets were men of learning who were very fond of the metaphor and the concepts, deep thought and rough cadences. Rough cadences means rhyming scheme. Generally, their poetry was born out of the union of mind and soul, thought and emotion, sublimity and triviality. They intellectualized the prevailing religious spirit and wrote amorous and spiritual verses. Amorous means quickly falling in love. The term metaphysical is a comment of Dryden and it has stuck, but it is misleading. The metaphysical poets were not philosophical or theological. Indeed, their work is often concerned with the lack of coherence and certainly in the world in which they found themselves. Dr. Johnson regards the metaphysical poets as men of learning who wanted to show their scholarship, startle the people, surprise the people with concepts, and yoke or mixed together heterogeneous ideas by violence together, who copied neither nature nor life. Their thoughts were often new but seldom natural. Dryden calls them the poets who affected metaphysics and perplexed with their nice speculation and philosophy. Hence, for Dryden and Johnson, the term metaphysical was to signify habitual deviation from naturalness of thoughts and style to novelty and quaintness. In the modern age, with the revival of metaphysical tradition of Donne, attempts have been made to define metaphysical poetry as the basis of its virtues. Now, modern critics think that in metaphysical poetry there is the fusion of thought and feeling, the assimilation of variety of experiences into a stimulating united whole. The metaphysical poets are psychological poets exploring the recesses of subconscious mind, but they are also concerned with ethical and religious matters. They were great wits whose thoughts were often new and striking. Their learning instructs and then surprises. They made use not only of classical learning and mythology but also of astronomy and and other sciences and philosophies also. Their themes are the simplest experiences of life, sorrows and joys, love and battle, the peace of the country, and the bustle and stir of the town. The metaphysical poets, surprised by the boldness and novelty of their images and the most extravagant hyperbole, you can say, they employ their vast out of the way learning without the slightest regard to propriety. As a result, they are in general violent, harsh, cold, and obscure. There are certain characteristics of the metaphysical poetry. The metaphysical poets use everyday language but with composed, intricate rhymes. They do not follow the traditional verse form like a Spenserian stanza. Another characteristic features is their fondness for conceits. Conceit is a comparison. All comparison discovers likeness in things unlike. According to Helen Gardner, I quote, "A conceit is like a spark made by striking two stones together. After the blast, the stones are just two stones." I unquote. Metaphysical poetry abounds in such flashes. The metaphysical poetry was not well received by the 18th and 19th century poets. Coleridge condemned the style of metaphysical poet who, in his opinion, conveyed in most fantastic language the most trivial thought. It was Grierson who brought out the merit of John Donne. Rupert Brooke called John Donne as the greatest love poet in English. Professor Grierson, T.S. Eliot praised metaphysical poetry as kind of philosophical poetry and a recreation of thought and feeling. The chief characteristics of metaphysical poetry are concentration, brevity, economy, epic dramatic quality, fondness for conceit, wit, arguments, and dramatic quality. John Donne is the chief exponent of the metaphysical poetry. He wrote various types of poems, lyrics, elegies, satires, and religious poems. George Herbert, a priest of the Church of England, belongs to this school of poetry, that is, metaphysical school of poetry. His poetry is the picture of many spiritual conflicts between God and his soul. Richard Crashaw is a secular poet. I will call him a secular poet. His poems do not reveal John Donne's complexity of minds and conflict of tension. Andrew Marvell is described as the first flower of serious and secular metaphysical verses. He loves nature and considers it to be God's bounty. His little poem to his coy mistress is a beautiful poem. Other metaphysical poets are Vaughan, Lovelace, Robert Herrick, and Cowley. So this was all about from my side on metaphysical school of poetry or the metaphysical poets. Thanks friends.